Alright, so Starfield has actually been getting some very unexpected news, and that is thanks to a new series that Bethesda Game Studios is doing over on their YouTube channel called Constellation Questions. And this time around it was with Todd Howard himself, which might be a regular thing moving forward, but we could also potentially see other developers that are working on the game answer some other questions as well. And I do have to say that this interview has done a very good job on getting me more interested in the game, as beforehand I was a little skeptical based off of the gameplay reveal, which had a few things I'm not exactly a huge fan of, but this interview has alleviated that a little bit, so I wanted to share all the information that we got from it in this video. There's some pretty exciting things to go over, and we haven't talked about Starfield for quite some time, so without further ado, let's roll the intro. Alright, so I think a pretty common question that they started off with was what actually inspired Starfield? Because we know there's a lot of sci-fi themes out there, and not all of them are the same. They're all in space, but they all kind of tackle the overall feel a little bit differently. So Todd Howard actually went very far back in time when he brought up the things that actually inspired Starfield. And the first one is Sundog. And if you don't know what that is, you're probably in the same boat as me. So as a little explanation, he noted that it was a science fiction game when Ultimas were out, where you basically had your own ship and could explore around. And it seems Todd Howard really loved this one. And the next example he gave was a game called Traveler, which was more of a pen and paper RPG game at the time of where D&D was getting popular. And it was a little bit more on the hard science fiction side, which kind of leads us into another common question that's been being asked about Starfield, and that's whether it's a hard space or hard sci-fi game. And just as a super basic explanation as what that would mean is whether or not the game commits heavily to scientific accuracy. And he actually noted that they are aiming for a more grounded feel where you could actually connect the dots, like this is where humans are now and this is where they could go, but it is just a video game. So while they're being semi-scientifically accurate, and there are some things that they're going to be more accurate on than others, it's still going to be a video game and they want it to be fun. In fact, they actually gave us an example of one of the changes that they made more recently, and that was on the fuel and grav drive system in the game. We were really into fuel and how the gravity drive works, and I'm reading papers on quantum physics and bending space in front of you. You don't actually warp, you bring space towards you. And so when we were playing that, it became like very punitive to the player. Your ship would run out of fuel and the game would just stop. You just want to get back to what you were doing, so we've changed it where the fuel in your ship and the grav drive limits how far you can go at once. But it doesn't run out of fuel. Maybe there will be an update or a mod that allows that, but that's what we're doing now. Now, I know this has been confusing some people, so I want to explain it in a super simple way. Basically, your fuel, don't think of it as fuel, think of it as just the distance in which you can travel at a time. And you can only travel to that distance. You can't fast travel, say, from one point of the map to the other side. Super basic way of explaining it, but that seems to be the way that it works based on his explanation. But next up, we actually got a lot of details on the character customization and traits. And when I say a lot of details, I mean we got the full title and description of almost every single trait in the game and some bonus little details that we're going to go over. But of course, we actually need to cover what Todd Howard had to say on this before we jump into all of that information. I love our trait list. It's super fun, but each one obviously comes with some sort of negative as well. And we have a way in the game, kind of an activity or quest you can do to remove that trait, as opposed to, I don't like my character, I want to start over. Each of them are like something that you can solve that removes the entire trait for the rest of your playthrough. And this is something I love to hear because not only can we remove these via quests, but also some activities. So it seems like there's going to be a little bit of diversity on how we can go about removing these. And it'll be interesting to see how obvious it is that we're doing that. Now, what he said here could be taken in two different ways, as he said that it removes the entire trait for the rest of your playthrough. So it's not exactly certain on whether or not he's just talking about the negative trait or if he's talking about the entire trait itself. Which, if that's the case, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I do kind of hope it's the system where it only removes the negative trait. but of course we'll probably get a clarification in the near future, or we'll just have to wait and see for ourselves. Also during this segment, we also got a load of other information as they scrolled through the majority of the trait list. So we're going to go through all of those right now, and then we'll dive into the rest of the interview. So first off, we've got alien DNA. You volunteered for a controversial experiment that combines alien and human DNA. As a result, you start with a higher health pool and greater endurance, but healing items aren't as effective. Then we've got Dream Home. You own a luxurious, customizable house on a peaceful planet. Unfortunately, it comes with a $50,000 credit mortgage with Gall Bank that has to be paid weekly. And this trait gets me very excited because it confirms that we will be having customizable houses, which we've come to expect with their previous games, and it won't all just be about the settlement system. So that is very exciting to me personally, and I do like the little added touch of the 50,000 credit mortgage that has to be paid weekly. Now, of course, we don't know how the currency works in this game. 50,000 sounds like a lot based off of their previous games, but it could be not that bad, so we'll have to see how this actually works when we get there. Next up, Empath. You are deeply connected to the feelings of others. Performing actions your companion likes will result in a temporary increase in combat effectiveness, but performing actions they don't like will have the precise opposite effect. So yes, of course, companions have already been confirmed in this game, and there's going to be some traits that actually apply to that, and I am honestly very interested in the companion system in this game because they have been noting that it's much more advanced than their previous games. Next up is Extrovert. You're a people person. Exerting yourself uses less oxygen when adventuring with human companions, but more when adventuring alone. Can't be combined with Introvert. So you'll notice that multiple of the traits that we'll be going through cannot be combined with other traits because they have opposing effects. Moving on, we've got Freestar Collective Settler. You gain access to special Freestar Collective dialogue options and better rewards from some missions given by the faction. But crime bounty towards other factions is greatly increased. Can't be combined with any other faction allegiance trait. So as Bethesda has previously gone over, the faction system is actually quite advanced in Starfield, as apparently you can join factions and actually stick with them, you can oppose factions, or you can even join a faction and go undercover. It's sounding like there's a lot of depth to the faction system, and I'm glad that the traits are kind of tying into that. And of course, it notes here that there's crime bounty with other factions. Next up is Hero Worshipped. You've earned the attention of an annoying, adoring fan who will show up randomly and jabber at you incessantly. On the plus side, he'll give you gifts. So for those of you that don't know, this is a nice little nod at the adoring fan in Oblivion. And I honestly love when games add little nods like this with things that still kind of fit with the experience. Now, moving on to Introvert. You really need your alone time. You have more endurance when adventuring alone, but less when adventuring with other human companions. Can't be combined with Extrovert. So this seems a lot like the Lone Wanderer perk. Of course, we could also see that as a perk in the game, but this seems to kind of replace that. Next up is Kid Stuff. Your parents are alive and well, and you can visit them at their home, but 10% of all the money you earn is deducted automatically and sent to them. So this is an interesting trade-off, and I just want to remind you, you can remove these traits. So I want you to just imagine how you can go about doing that for this trait. But moving along, we've got Neon Street Rat. You grew up on the mean streets of Neon. You gain access to special dialogue options and better rewards from some missions on Neon. Crime bounty by other factions is greatly increased. And again, it can't be combined with any other faction allegiance trait. Now, as for our last two, these ones are opposing ones, and you can only have one of them at a time, first of which is Raised Enlightened. You grew up as a member of the Enlightened. You gain access to a special chest full of items in the House of Enlightened in New Atlantis, but lose access to the Sanctum Universum chest. Can't be combined with any other religion trait. And the second being Raised Universal. You grew up as a member of the Sanctum Universum. You gain access to a special chest full of items in the Sanctum Universum in New Atlantis, but lose access to the House of the Enlightened chest. And again, can't be combined with any other religion trait. Now, there were some other traits that were listed, but we didn't actually get to see the description of, that being Serpent's Embrace, which is blocked out by using one of the religion traits, Spaced, Taskmaster, Terra Firma, and United Colonies Native. There's also a handful that are off screen that we can't see at all. So we'll have to wait until we have a full collection of all the traits in the game. But that brings us to speech checks and dialogue that will reflect our character build. And Todd Howard had quite a bit to say on this and sounds very excited about what they're doing with the dialogue and the different paths you can take in this game. We've done a lot of different dialogue systems. We've gone back to, I'll call it like a classic Bethesda dialogue, with you're looking at the character and how they emote, and you have a series of choices there. The scope of the game, the amount of content we're making, is a bit more than we've done before in terms of quests and things like that. But the depth in some of the stuff with the dialogue, we've just passed 250,000 lines, and so that's a lot of dialogue. But we've gone through it, and the impact is really there. And that includes my favorite speech persuasion system. It feels like it's a part of the dialogue, but you're spending points to persuade them. It feels natural, not like I've entered some other mode where I'm not doing regular dialogue. I'm in this mode of persuading you to get what I want. And we got a better look at the system. It's a little bit confusing on how the UI presents it, as we can see that there's the first option, which is a +1 with a green, a +3 that's yellow, and +4 that's yellow, and a +5 option, which is red. And this seems to dictate how likely that option is to actually succeed. We can even see at the bottom that there's a persuasion ticker with a total of 4 turns that you can take. So it'll be interesting to see how the system actually works once we can get our hands on it or get a better in-depth look, as it seems a little bit more advanced than we've seen even in their previous games. So this is another one of the things that is getting me more interested in this game. Really everything shown off and discussed in this video has gotten me more excited than I was previously for Starfield, as I wasn't a huge fan of the gameplay showcase, but what we've seen here, especially like 4 times the dialogue of Skyrim, for example, gets me very interested to see the depth that there is in this game with the handcrafted content. Still not a huge fan of the procedural generation, but we'll see how that plays out when we can actually get our hands on the game, or even just a more uncut kind of gameplay showcase, which they have noted that we will be seeing more of the game in the near future as well, so we don't have to wait for the game to fully come out. They are going to be sharing more, and that is always a great thing to hear. Now, before I leave you today, I do want to share that we are raising money again here on the channel for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, alongside Fallout for Hope, a group of amazing Fallout and Bethesda content creators that are fighting the good fight together. Last year, we raised over $170,000 together as a community, and this year, we're trying to surpass that. So if you're able, you can find the link to donate to the cause down in the description below. Every single dollar counts and will mean the world to me, St. Jude, and all those in need. I hope you all can join me in fighting the good fight. But that's it for this video. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, this is Apoqsi, signing off.